Tell me if you've heard this one before. The Carolina Panthers stand pat at the trade deadline. And while that may be frustrating to some of you, I think they made the right decision. I'll tell you why right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We're back here once again on a Wednesday, and what do we do? Every single Wednesday throughout the entirety of the regular season, you send me in mailbag questions by either adding me or DMing me over on Twitter at Julian Council and also over on Blue Sky at Julian Council. Then I pick out the best questions and answer them here on the show. And I'm going to do that a little bit later on. You guys have questions about Rico Dowdle, of course, because Rico's been awesome. And will he be back in Carolina in 2026? That's really a conversation for February or March, but okay, we'll have it briefly today. Bryce Young, some of you think he should be re-signed. Others are asking, is he holding the offense back? And Ryan Fitzgerald, is he having the best rookie kicker season ever? Someone believes. We'll look at the numbers over the last 25 years and answer whether that is the case at all. But today, on Tuesday, was the NFL trade deadline as I'm recording this show for y'all right now, 4 p.m. Eastern time. The deadline came and went, and the Panthers, not really surprisingly so, decided yet again that we're good. We're going to sit back here with what we got, not make any moves, and just stick to the process, which I actually think is the right decision for Carolina. Now, that may upset you because there's a lot of people right now, rightfully so, excited about where the team is at, sitting at 5-4. First time they've been in this position since 2019, back when Luke Kuechly was still a Carolina Panther. Greg Olsen was still a Carolina Panther. Colin Jones, remember him? He was still here at that point in time as well. So it's been a while, y'all, since they've been 9 games into a season, and there was real hopes and dreams alive of being a playoff team and playing meaningful football in December and, dare I say, January for your Panthers. So I totally get it, but this was not anything that wasn't really expected when you saw a lot of reporting out there. I brought up Mike Kay of the Charlotte Observer. He had been reporting over the last couple of weeks. Didn't seem like they were going to make a move. I told you I spoke to somebody, and they told me they were unsure of whether Carolina was going to make a move. That was not a yes or a no, but if they felt like they're going to be active as far as buyers, then they would have said maybe more than they were unsure. Then I told y'all on the show yesterday when we talked about would the Panthers make a move, Dan Graziano of ESPN.com had reported on Sunday, and using Carolina as an example, how the NFL trade deadline maybe is just a tad bit too early for teams who are sitting there like Carolina heading to week 9 at 4-4. And even if they were 5-4, which of course they are, 4-5, they were in a spot where, do they really need to add somebody? Is anyone going to materially change their season? And that he felt like the Panthers, as a result of all the questions that they would have about where they actually are in this stage of the rebuild, that they would probably stand pat this week, which of course has happened. Then Jonathan Jones, a reliable source, NFL insider for CBSSports.com, former beat reporter for the Carolina Panthers, or covering the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. He put this out on Tuesday morning. Patience, question mark. And he said, if you're waiting on snakes and sparklers around the league, you may prepare yourself for the poppets in Carolina. I don't know what poppets are. Do y'all know what those are? Because is that the things that, I guess that would make sense, the little things that kind of look like the little ice cream pops that you just, I don't know. I don't get the sense, that's what he's saying. I don't get the sense they'll do anything that is more than a late round pick swap for a player, if they'll do anything at all. The Panthers know they're building something, and I don't get the sense they are under any illusions they are one player away from a deep playoff run. they will want to keep legitimate capital, continue building through the draft. And even Dave Canales, Panthers head coach, who spoke to the media on Monday, he brought up that the record being at 5-4, that was not going to factor in to their decisions as far as what they were going to do at the deadline, which is very easy for them to say when you're sitting at 5-4 instead of sitting at 1-7 or like they were last year, or sitting at 7-2 like other teams across the league. When you're in those spots, okay, yeah, let's go for it. New England at 7-2. If you're 1-7 like the Jets, okay, yeah, let's offload Quinnen Williams. Let's offload Sauce Gardner. Let's get a bunch of picks to rebuild once again. And because it's the Jets, likely get it wrong once again as well. But the Panthers, smack dab squarely in the middle of the NFL, with still a tough schedule remaining, and in a spot where they're more in an evaluation mode, in my opinion, than actually let's go out there and do something this season, which they can absolutely do. I think that they are keenly aware of exactly where they're at, and they want to stick to that process, which I think is why they made this decision and why I think it's the right decision. Because you look at the roster right now, offensively, with the offensive line, there's questions about Icky's contract, which he'll be here next year, whether they give him an extension after this season or not, but he's going to be back next year. Damian Lewis should be back next year. Cade Mays, I would guess, would be the favorite to be the starting center next season. We'll see how that all plays out once he's available. We'll find out more about that on Wednesday when Dave speaks to the media and the official injury report for week 10 against New Orleans comes out. You look at Robert Hunt, he'll be back next year. Then Taylor Moton got his extension. So offensive line-wise, they're in a good spot. Receiver, young players, but they feel good about what they have right now in McMillan, in Coker, and in Leggett. And then tight end, I like the room that they have right now. And running back, we'll get to that here momentarily. They're in a nice spot offensively. There's just still questions about, do you have the quarterback? Now, if a quarterback, a high-level guy, a sure thing was available, then maybe that's a trade that you make. But obviously, you don't make those kind of trades typically in the NFL. Like if you're getting a quarterback because your guy got hurt and you need to go get a veteran to come in and to keep things afloat for the time being. That's not the situation here in Carolina. They're still trying to figure out in the final 8 games who exactly Bryce Young is and who this team is with Bryce Young. And defensively, they've looked good on the defensive line with Derek Brown back and the additions that they made with Bobby Brown III and Turk Wharton, Ashawn Robinson coming back for another year. They're still figuring out what they have at linebacker, Trevor Wallace, Christian Roseboom, probably a 1-year rental. They're pretty solid at corner. And then at safety, there's questions after the season about Nick Scott and whether Lathan Ransom steps in that spot, and then whatever happened to Monty Richardson. So you look at the roster, outside linebacker, yes, that's an area where you would have thought that's the spot. But man, look at what people are paying. Talked about it yesterday. The Eagles' 3rd-round pick for Jalen Phillips, who's had a torn ACL and an Achilles tear, and is probably an 8-week rental for Philadelphia. Maybe he sticks around because he's been in the Vic Fangio defense before, but I don't know. Are you trying to give him a 3rd-round pick for that kind of situation? I don't think so, especially when you have 2 young guys who you just drafted in Princely Amamiellan and Nick Scorton, who are going to get a lot of burn in the second half of this season. Have already gotten plenty of burn so far in the first 9 weeks of the year, plus with DJ Wonnum. So I understood a lot of people wanting to get a pass rusher. I just didn't believe that adding someone on the edge was going to materially change the season. I don't think Jalen Phillips was going to do that. I don't think that Jermaine Johnson, who's staying in New York, was going to do that. I don't think Bradley Chubb down in Miami was going to do that for them. And of course, they weren't trading for Quinnen Williams because they already have a Quinnen Williams. And they weren't trading for Sauce Gardner because they already have a Sauce Gardner. So they weren't going to make any of those splashy moves, and they did not want to part ways with some of the draft compensation. And looking at 2026, the Panthers have their 1st-round pick, which is awesome because a couple years ago, they didn't have their 1st-round pick. The Bears trade, that's over and done with. They have their own 2nd-round pick, their own 3rd, their own 4th, Minnesota's 5th, based off the Adam Thielen trade, their own 5th, their own 6th-rounder, and they don't have a 7th-round pick because that belongs to Minnesota because of the Adam Thielen trade. They're in a good spot compensation-wise. Are they having a bunch of stockpiled picks right now? No, but still, you look at it, at least you have your own picks. At least you can sit there, evaluate your team through the next 8 weeks, and then go into the season, into the offseason, and figure out what exactly you want to do. But at 5-4, of course, have hope for the rest of the year, but stick to the plan. There was no reason for Carolina to make a move that was going to cost them some valuable draft compensation, and then they end up going 7-10 or 8-9, which still is very likely, and I think more likely than that they go out there and finish off 10-7 and go to the playoffs. And I want them to go to the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. I want to be covering a playoff team. I just still think that that's more unlikely to happen than them missing out again, but just barely in making the progression that you and I and a lot of people expected and were hoping them to make this year. Very few of you, when I asked back in September at the beginning of the year on Labor Day, very few of you I asked about what your expectations were telling me when the division go to the playoffs. Most of you wanted to see a competent football team, which check you have, and a team get to 8 or 9 wins, which after beating Green Bay, beat the Saints on Sunday, beat them again down in New Orleans, beat Atlanta. That's 8 wins. And again, another box check to what your expectations were. So to me, this was the right decision. No one they were going to add, unless Patrick Mahomes was suddenly available, was going to materially change their season this year. Stick to the process. And that's what they're doing. Good decision by Dan Morgan, Brant Tillis, Dave Canales, and maybe even David Tepper for the Panthers to once again stand pat at the trade deadline. Now, will they stand pat once the offseason rolls around and they have a decision to make at running back when it comes to Rico Dowdle? I feel like this is a conversation for February, but I guess we'll have it here in November as Rico Mania is continuing here in Carolina. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers, and that could be you, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It's that simple. Find a winner, get that $5 on them, $300 in bonus bets, free money. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on Locked on Panthers, it's Wednesday, and what we do every Wednesday here throughout the regular season, you ask me questions by adding me or DMing me over on Twitter and Blue Sky. Then I pick out the best questions and answer them here on the show every single Wednesday throughout the regular season, the weekly Wednesday mailbag here on Locked on Panthers. First question comes over from Jacob, who says, I'm sure this question has been asked a lot, but in all caps, with Rico continuing to do what he's doing, do you think it's going to be hard for Dan and Dave to let him walk after the season is over? I know you're against paying running backs, but at this point in the season, it seems like Carolina could possibly have a decision to make. And, well, yes, they probably are going to have a decision to make because Rico continues to be outstanding, Jacob, and all the other people who asked me about Rico Dowdle and whether he'll be back in Carolina next year. Now, I said a couple of weeks ago, in all likelihood, Rico would not be a Panther as time goes on. Feels like it gets closer and closer to maybe he will be a Panther, but I don't know, man. It's November 5th. I don't give a damn about whether Rico Dowdle is going to be a Panther next season. They have 8 more games. They are sitting here at 5-4. Just focus on the season at hand in what he's doing instead of worrying about, is he going to be here in 2026? We could all be dead in 2026. Okay, so like, why are we worried about this? This is the one thing. It's like, okay, I get it. Be excited about how well Rico's playing, but it doesn't have to be, oh, well, got to pay Rico. Got to make sure he's here. Just guys, just enjoy the moment. But fine, we'll have a February conversation here in early November with 8 weeks left in the season. The Panthers sitting at 5-4 for the first time since 2019 with realistic playoff hopes. We'll have the conversation because everyone keeps asking me about it, and we don't really need to keep doing this every single week. But let's go ahead and do it now. Looking at Rico, since week 5, he is leading the NFL in rushing. he's been great. And if you just take away the since week 5 thing, look at since week 1, he's 3rd overall in the National Football League in rushing yards with 735 yards. He's 2nd during that time span in the NFL in EPA per rush among running backs with at least 100 carries, only behind Jonathan Taylor, who has been outstanding up in Indianapolis this year. He is 4th in yards after contact. He's 2nd in explosive rush percentage, which means runs of over 12 yards. He's 4th in rushing successful play rate and 3rd in successful play percentage on run plays. He has been a top 5 back in the National Football League since week 1 of the season, and he's probably been a top 2 or 3 back, maybe the best back since week 5 of this year as well. The dude has been outstanding. And because he's played that well, he's earning a lot of money and likely going to earn more in the final 8 weeks of the season. The Panthers only signed Rico to a 1-year, $2.75 million contract, which is exactly the amount of money you pay a running back. It's not federal minimum wage. So he's getting overpaid in my book. Not really, guys. It's all a joke, so relax. But $2.75 million, that makes sense for a running back in this day and age, with an additional $3.5 million in performance incentives available to him. He's already earned $500,000 for going over 800 yards from scrimmage. He's 83 yards away from another $500,000 and 950 yards from scrimmage. He'll need 400 more yards after that to earn $1.5 million and get to 1,350 yards from scrimmage. Like, he's going to get there probably in like 4 weeks, the way that he's playing so far this season. He needs 3 more touchdowns for another $500,000. So at the very least, as long as Rico is able to stay healthy, which please God, because the offense is so bad if he's not out there because they can't throw the ball, and we'll get to that momentarily, he's going to get $3 million at least. Now it comes into the Pro Bowl voters, and I think that includes you guys, to get him another $500,000 and for him to check every single box there on an incentive-laden contract. And when you have someone do that, it's hard to say, yeah, we don't need this guy around. Here's the problem. Here's the rub. You got real excited about what Chuba Hubbard was doing in the locker room as a leader, as a culture setter, and just the respect everyone had. And then on the field, he was on his way to having a career year. And around this time a year ago, while they were about to head to Germany to go face off against the Giants in a magical day, I'll never forget what a week that was out there in Bavaria, they decided to give Chuba Hubbard a 4-year, $33 million contract that could go up to $37 million if he hit incentives. Now, when you hear that, it's not really 4 years, $33 million. And I know I brought this up plenty of times that it's a 4-year contract, $33 million. He was probably unlikely to ever see all of that money. And certainly the way that Rico's playing, the way Chuba has played so far this season, he ain't going to see that money. Okay? So it's really a 2-year deal worth whatever was guaranteed, which is about $15 million. And if you look at next season, if they are going to keep Rico, which kind of feels like at this point in time, they probably should, even though it's been 3 starts and there's still 8 more games left to go. Let's let things play out. But I don't really anticipate him slowing down. But if he does slow down, then do you really need to bring him back? That's the one thing I was talking about. This is why I'm saying it's a February conversation. Let the season play out and see how things happen. Because again, knock on wood, let them stay healthy. But if something happens, you know what I'm saying? So looking at Chuba, if the Panthers cut him, they would lose $1.5 million against salary cap, according to overthecap.com. And it also take on a $9 million dead cap hit. So cutting him, not really an option for next year. I also don't think it's much of an option to have Rico Dowdle, Chuba Hubbard, Jonathan Brooks, and Trevor Etienne all on the roster next year. We have no idea what Jonathan Brooks is going to give the Panthers and what he could potentially do next season and beyond. Like, that is a big mystery in the running back room. Trevor Etienne, I think, has actually been impressive when he's gotten opportunities to run the ball this year, and he's improved as a returner over the last couple of weeks. So he's going to be a factor as your third running back, or maybe your backup, depending on how things play out. Now, the Panthers could trade Chuba, and if they do that, I'm guessing they're going to have to eat some of that salary remaining, as he has $4.5 million guaranteed next year and a $5.645 million base salary. I don't think any team that's acquiring him is trying to take on $4.5 million for a guy who lost his job halfway through the season before. That's just my guess. And if they do trade him, they could save just under $3 million against salary cap and then take on $4.5 million of dead money, which is far more palatable than losing $1.5 million and then the $9 million dead cap hit. So if they're bringing back Rico, it does not need to be on a 4-year, $33 million contract, because we just saw what happened the last time they did that and how they got a guy who on the cheap came in and outperformed that dude, and is why I think paying running backs is ridiculous. They would then need to move off of Chuba, trade him away, probably have to give up some assets there, maybe take on the bulk of the salary to do so. And then you give Rico another, in my opinion, incentive-laden deal. You get him like a $4.5 million contract, and then you say, if you do all this again, then you can make up to $10 million. Like, that's what it should be. It should not be, let's go ahead and give this guy a bunch of guaranteed money when he could be just like Chuba and get outperformed. And hopefully that's not what happens. But for me right now, I just want to see the season play out. I want to see him continue to play well and really make it to a point where Carolina has no choice but to bring him back. And if they're bringing him back, they've got to find a way to get out of that contract of Chuba and move off of him, likely via trade, if there's any team in the league that's interested in taking on Chuba Hubbard, who's a nice player, but never really been like a top back in the NFL. So there's the whole Rico Dowdle, Chuba Hubbard situation and everything y'all keep asking me about. He's got to stay. Let's see. Let's see how the next 8 weeks play out. And let's also understand that Chuba has $4.5 million guaranteed next year, and they drafted Trevor Etienne and Jonathan Brooks the last 2 years. They value running backs in Carolina. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that both Rico and Chuba are back here once again next season in the same backfield. Will they be sharing carries, though? Because that didn't really work out the 2 weeks that they did that. And if Rico's running like this and Chuba's running the way that he's run this season so far, maybe he's out of gas. Why would you want both of those guys to be back next season? We have two younger guys on the cheap who, at least one of them in Etienne, looks like he's got some juice to him. So there's a conversation that everyone wants to have about, will Rico be back next year? We will see. So we'll focus on the rest of the season, enjoying it. And then once, I guess, January rolls around, really February, we can dive into the numbers throughout the season and whether it does actually make sense for Carolina to retain a running back and pay another one yet again, which, oh my God. But yeah, there we go. Bryce Young, is he holding the offense back, or is it time to pay him? Two people asking two different questions. We'll answer that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payments into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and so much more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. I love that Built. Your rent finally works with you. You're earning points every month on something you already have to pay. Whether you're grabbing food at your favorite local restaurant or heading to the gym, you're still earning rewards. Built can make everyday life feel even more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use that link so they know we sent you. A few more questions here on the weekly Wednesday mailbag, and I'm sure there's people right now being like, oh my God, this guy's such a Rico Dowdle hater. I'm not a Rico Dowdle hater. The guy's playing really well. I said to y'all that I had no problem with the rotation because, yeah, Chuba was really good last year. Dave has a ton of experience with him. Of course, they're going to give the guy that they gave all that money to an opportunity to go out there and to be a part of the game plan moving forward. He didn't do it. And once he hadn't done it, I said to y'all, it makes way more sense that Rico would be the guy getting the lion's share of the carries and not be in a situation like against Buffalo where he had less carries than Chuba. Like, that didn't make any sense. It's been awesome seeing Rico, a North Carolina guy like me, having success out there on the field, unlike me, because I've never done that. Can't do it. I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he has been the offense, because Lord knows if they didn't have Rico Dowdle, they would not be 5-4. I'm happy about the situation. I just don't feel like at this point in time, we really need to be focusing in on, will he be on the team next year? Enjoy the season. Like, that's all I'm trying to say. We don't need to get into the contract stuff. We can just focus on, damn, this guy's been a top 5 back since the beginning of the season. And over the last month, he's been maybe the best running back in the NFL. And he's a Carolina Panther. And he's going to be a big part of their playoff push. And if they get there, then yeah, I think it's going to probably take care of itself, even if I rightfully believe, because you saw what happened last year, maybe don't pay a running back, because another guy can come in on the cheap and outperform him and be a top 5 back. So not a Rico Dowdle hater, for all the people who are probably yelling at me being like, this guy just hates Rico. No, I just hate paying running backs. I think it's fine. Good for the running backs to get paid. I'm for guys getting paid, but also it's kind of like, come on, guys, do we really need to pay that position any money? Speaking of paying guys, Bryce Young. Adam and Jake have 2 separate questions on opposite ends of the continuum. Adam asking me, I know Bryce Young still has another year left on his rookie deal, but is there a way to go ahead and extend him now or after the season? I feel like he's shown enough to be the guy long-term, and the draft and free agency is too much of a gamble to try and get a guy there. He probably won't be too expensive either. Thoughts? Okay, Adam. Then Jake asked me, is Bryce Young holding back the offense from truly being explosive, or is it the receiving core not as good as we hoped it would be this season? Seems the only option he has right now is McMillan, and there's no clear number 2 wide receiver option. So very different things. Is Bryce holding back the offense to, hey, is it time to pay Bryce Young? Let me try to answer this. No, it's not time to pay Bryce Young. No, like with Rico Dowdle, 8 more games left in the season. Let's evaluate the next 8 games and then come to a decision. Now, based off of what we've seen so far this year in the 8 games that Bryce has started and played in, definitely not. Like, there's a bigger, and Rico's expiring contract, so obviously there's going to be more of a reason to pay him this offseason, because if you don't, he won't be on the team next year. But I understand the case for Rico Dowdle. I don't understand the case for Bryce Young, because yes, he has 1 more year left on his deal. The real decision they have to make after the season, in my opinion, and just based off of how they have handled things recently, is whether to exercise his 5th-year option. I felt like going into the season that Bryce would play well enough, and just where they're at right now with this process and this rebuild of year 2 of Dan and Dave and Bryce with them as their quarterback, that they'd want to give him at least another year. And then when you look around the league, our old buddy Sam Darnold, horrible situation in New York, not a much better situation down here in Carolina, sat for a year in San Francisco and learned, was awesome last year in Minnesota, even better now in Seattle. Like, good for Sam. I was never a believer, still kind of not, but happy for the guy that he's out there balling, because kind of hard to look at him right now and think that, okay, that guy's not a stud. He absolutely has been the last 2 years, of course. So it took him a while to get there. So maybe we should be a little bit more patient with some of these guys, instead of just saying after 3 years, okay, move on. After 4 years, okay, move on. Maybe it makes the most sense, even if Bryce continues to not throw for 200 yards and they win those games, maybe it makes more sense to give them the 5th-year option and see this thing through for 2 more years, especially if the run game looks the way it does, with or without Rico, and if the defense is improving like it has, and it will get even better with some of the young guys at the edge rusher spot. Why not keep seeing how it plays out until it gets to a point where very clearly Bryce Young is holding back the offense? Like right now, when you look at the numbers, he's been the bottom quarterback in the NFL among all the starters. We're looking at starting quarterbacks so far this season, guys who have started games in the NFL who have at least 100 pass attempts. That's 35 quarterbacks. He's 32nd in EPA per dropback. He's 25th in EPA per play. So the scramble yards, that helps. He's 22nd in successful offensive play percentage. He's 31st in explosive pass play percentage. That's passes 16 yards and more. He's 33rd in yards per attempt and 30th in passer rating. Out of 35 guys in those categories, y'all. So, Adam, does that sound like a guy you need to extend after the season? No. Is it a guy that you could potentially give the fifth-year option to? Yeah, but those numbers, and that's production, guys. You can't really argue against production because we're sitting there and watching it every single Sunday where it's like, oh, there's something missing in the passing game. And is it the quarterback? Is it the receivers? I'm right now leaning on the quarterback, but maybe it is the receivers. T-Mac's been good. Xavier has had his ups and downs. Jalen has really only been out there for a couple of weeks, and he's probably not where he's going to be as things move on the rest of the season. Haven't gotten a lot of JT Sanders so far this year. So have they held up to their end of the bargain? Not really. So maybe that's more of the receivers. Maybe it's both. All I know is the numbers are telling you that Bryce hasn't been that great. But when you look at when it matters most, like against Miami, like against Dallas, like on Sunday against Green Bay, he gets the team down the field and sets them up to win a game. And he did it last year on numerous occasions against Philadelphia where XL dropped the game-winning touchdown, and against Tampa Bay where it looked like they had won the game, and even against Kansas City. So he's shown the ability that he may not give you a lot in the first, second, or third quarter, but when you really need him there in the fourth quarter and sometimes in overtime, he can get you down the field for a game-winning drive. And if you go back to 2023 when he entered the league, he has 9 game-winning drives, which is the most in the NFL, tied with Patrick Mahomes. Yes, that Patrick Mahomes, Geno Smith, and Jalen Hurts. Now, he's not Patrick Mahomes. We know that. Can he be Jalen Hurts? Because I think there's still plenty of conversation about how good really is Jalen. Geno Smith's been awful this year, but Geno was playing well in Seattle. Can you beat Jalen Hurts for this offense? Hopefully it doesn't get to a point where you got your receivers acting like A.J. Brown and mad as hell. But can you just be that? Can you do your job, be your 111th in this offense? Because right now, yeah, it kind of feels like he's holding him back. But as far as other options, and I'm at the point sitting here through 9 games this season, 8 Bryce Young starts, to where, yeah, of course he'll be the starter again next year. And I'm interested in the fifth-year option and letting things play out because I think that patience should be given, especially when his rookie year is basically thrown away. And then he got benched early last year. He hasn't gotten one full season of where things aren't completely effed up beyond repair to where he can be the guy. It's finally happening this year. So wouldn't you want another year of that? Maybe another 2 years of that? And you look at the quarterback big board that Mel Kiper Jr. has right now. His top quarterback's Dante Moore at Oregon. Seeing some reporting that the kid's probably not coming out this year. Maybe he does. Then it's Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. I like Mendoza, but he doesn't excite me that much. Ty Simpson from Alabama. This is the only time he's ever started. He has more years of eligibility. I would think that go back to college and keep balling and get more experience. Lenore Sellers is number 4. I watch every South Carolina game. I'm marrying a Gamecock. All my buddies went down there. I've never understood the Sellers hype as far as being a top-tier quarterback in this upcoming draft. So I don't get that. John Mateer, no, he should go back to school. Carson Beck, no. Samuel Levitt also should go back to school. Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati, what? Trinidad Chambliss, I like him, but okay. Garrett Nussmeier, I'm not seeing it this year. He's been banged up. So you look at the quarterbacks, and the Jets are a team that acquired a ton of draft picks on Tuesday at the deadline. They should probably wait till 2027 because I don't see anybody on that list unless Dante Moore, who started a little bit at UCLA as a freshman under Chip Kelly, then sat out last year as a backup to Dylan Gabriel in Oregon, and now startings look pretty good. And that Oregon offense kind of slowed down recently. Unless he's coming out, but you're not going to be in that position to get him. So, yeah, I don't think they need to extend Bryce at this point in time. Fifth-year option, we can talk about it once we get there, and that's an April conversation because they don't have to make that decision until May, which we got a while to go until we get there. Is he holding him back? Partially yes, partially no, partially let's wait and see, as they still have 49ers, the Rams, the Bucs twice, and Seattle. And those quarterbacks, they're playing pretty damn well. See how he stacks up against those teams and how the passing game looks once we get there. Sam, now this question asking, where would you rank this among wins as far as the win on Sunday against Green Bay since you started covering the team? Well, since I've started covering the team, the Carolina Panthers are 24 and 53. So there have only been 24 wins to look at. And aside from the one on Sunday, the biggest one I can think of since I've been covering the team since the beginning of 2021 is the 2022 win against the Lions, where they had 570 yards total offense, a franchise record. That day, they ran all over the Lions, who were red hot at that point in time, and that set up a de facto NFC South title game the next week at Tampa. I feel like that's the biggest win that I've seen. The one against Seattle a couple weeks prior to that, getting back-to-back wins, winning on the road for the first time in a long time, was also big. With the Lions game, I think that has to be the biggest win. As far as, and I asked people this on Sunday on Twitter at Julian Council, I asked him, this is the biggest win since when? I think it's the biggest win since 2017 against Minnesota. That was a 10-2 Vikings team coming to Bank of America Stadium to play an 8-4 Panthers team who had just lost to the Saints. And they won that game. We remember Cam juking the hell out of whoever that safety was, that long run, that stadium going insane. The last time the Panthers went to the playoffs, and that really had you feeling, okay, this is going to be a playoff team this year. They got a big win against a team that ended up going 13-3 and playing in the NFC title game. So I think it's the biggest win since then. Now, people said the biggest win since the Packers game the next week. That was a 7-6 Packers team. It was a great win. It got Carolina to 10-4. I think the week prior against Minnesota was a bigger win. So biggest win in 8 years, biggest win aside from the Lions one in 2022, as far as since I've been hosting this podcast, which dates back to the end of March of 2021. Alex now has a question. Final question, by the way. I'm not sure what the majority of rookie kicker seasons stats look like, but Ryan Fitzgerald has to be having one of the better rookie seasons I've ever seen. I get Rico has been a story, but do you think the success of Ryan Fitzgerald this season is something that should be talked about more? I mean, the guy doesn't miss outside of 30-mile-per-hour wins and has been extremely clutch. He has been clutch. He's had a couple of game-winning kicks so far this season. Now, he has missed a couple of kicks, missed an extra point there in New England, missed field goal right at the end of the half against Buffalo, where it was rushed, but still got to make that one. And I think there's another miss in there. All around, though, he's been really good. There's been far fewer downs than there have been ups. There's been a lot of ups so far this year. Now, I did look at some of the numbers. Looking over at True Media, I toggled it to where I looked at every rookie kicker dating back to the 2000 season, so the last 25 years through 9 weeks, just to see where they were. And there's a field goal kicker EPA stat, which there's a stat for everything nowadays. He is 9th, Ryan Fitzgerald is, out of the 93 kickers from 2000 to right now in field goal kicker EPA. That's counting extra points and field goals. Now, I have to understand the extra point has changed. It's moved back during that period of time, but still 14.9 expected points added. That's what he has so far this year through 9 weeks as a rookie. That's actually ahead of Brandon Aubrey, who may be the best kicker in the league right now down there in Dallas, who had a 14.8 EPA, and just behind Harrison Butker, who ended up in Kansas City after not winning the job in Carolina. He's at 15.2. Justin Tucker, Hall of Famer, was at 15.3. Joey Sly is actually 5th. And of course, he was here in Carolina, had a 16.6 EPA. The top 4 guys were Greg Zuerlein, Legatron, who may actually end up being a Hall of Famer as well. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. Jake Elliott, who was massive for the Eagles that year as a rookie. Will Reichard last year for the Vikings. And Blake Grupe down in New Orleans. So top 10 out of 93 rookies since 2020 or 2000, I'd rather. Like, that's pretty good. So is he having the best rookie kicker season ever? No, maybe the best one you've ever seen, but apparently not. I don't know how long you've been watching the team. Sounds like Joey Sly actually had a better start. But either way, he's been good. And yes, he has been a nice story here in Carolina to start off the season as well. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Host is Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. Where next Wednesday, I'll be back answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is at me or DM me over on Twitter to get those questions in, or over on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council, to get those questions in for next week's show. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. We'll be back tomorrow for the Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday, presented by Prize Picks with Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints.